This right here, my friends, is an example, and I mean a good example of what your brain looks like when it's on MSNBC.
Audience for fascism, and you set them up for a complete takeover of the DOJ. This is all about allowing Trump to get away with any crime he wants, as you sort of slighted and sort of, laid out very nonchalantly just a little bit ago. He was impeached twice. Doesn't really matter that he tried to blackmail the leader of Ukraine into digging up non-existent dirt on Joe Biden, but that doesn't matter to you.
Joe Biden threatened to withhold arms.
This right here is a small little segment that's been going viral, or at least it's been picking up steam here recently, and obviously I'm about to help it pick up a little bit more steam. But this segment on Piers Morgan Uncensored. Now, really quick, I've done a lot of videos, well, some responding to Piers Morgan and some of the craziness that we see. I think the last one I did was one on Dr. John Mearsheimer, and I was trying to land the point that Pierce did not seem to understand what Dr. Mearsheimer was saying about the situation in Ukraine and why it is that the United States would probably not use nukes if Ukraine was actually nuked, because it was something that, quite frankly, did not have any actual honest-to-God strategic value to the U.S. It's a different conversation altogether. Obviously, it's off topic, but I just figured I'd go ahead and point that out before I go any further. I don't agree with Pierce when it comes to gun takes, and I don't agree with his takes when it comes to Alex Jones. However, recently, though, he's been having a lot of takes out here that have actually been, how do I say, not too bad. He had a debate recently with Cenk Uygur about the situation involving the Donald Trump conviction, and it was actually a pretty good one. I'm just going to link this video right here in the description box from Vince Dow, and of course, I'll probably link that video, the full video, in the description box as well, but it's about an hour long, so if you guys want to watch the full episode, it's up to you. I'll leave it there. But to me, I thought this episode right here, this right here is what we call the person that, quite frankly, just doesn't really know. And what I mean by doesn't really know is somebody who obviously has been, how do I say, they've been inside the blue cauldron of San Francisco, or the blue cauldron of Manhattan, or the blue cauldron of Washington, D.C. for a good portion of their life. And they've only watched maybe one type of organization, or one type of news organization. And my guess in this particular case would be MSNBC. Now, before I go any further, I want to go ahead and say this right now. This is actually part 1 of 2. There's going to be a second part coming out, because when I actually watched the full episode and run it back and watched it again, I realized there's actually a lot more here to discuss, rather than this person having serious, and I mean serious, levels of Trump derangement syndrome. It's actually much, much more deeper than you think, but we will talk more about that in the next video, because, well, there's also some things here that I've kind of alluded to in the past about, how do I say, people moving out of certain areas, people obviously switching addresses. Eventually, people on one side of the aisle will want to go stay with people who are a little bit more like-minded. And of course, one of the areas that people are looking at the most is obviously the city of New York. Done a lot of videos on that. And of course, a lot of those videos included Kevin O'Leary, who was basically telling you, or telling the city of New York, that if you continued on with this type of bullcrap that you're doing, using the judicial system over simple stuff like, say, business transfers, loans, and of course also convicting a guy over using, how do I say this, a legal expense, or writing something down as a legal expense, after a while you are eventually going to lose business. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into this craziness.
Of office is one party trying to incarcerate the other's leader. I don't know where that leaves America in a few years' time.
Well, this will only come back to bite Democrats if they lose their grip on power, and obviously they don't think that they will. This is why President Biden the other day, when he was walking out of a press briefing, was asked, Mr. President, Donald Trump says that you are imprisoning him because he's your political rival. What do you say to that charge?
Well, I'll stop you there. We have the clip. Let's play the clip.
Mr. President, can you tell us, sir, Donald Trump refers to himself as a political prisoner and blames you directly. What's your response to that, sir? Do you think the conviction will have an impact on the campaign?
I mean, you look like Jack Nicholson in The Shining at the end of that, but...
Well, Piers, it just means that obviously the other side is going to whine when they lose. They normally do that too, but obviously this right here is a very, very dangerous thing to do. So it's an extremely dangerous precedent, but I will talk more about that in the follow-up to this video here, because in the follow-up, obviously we're going to be talking a lot more about what's probably to come, but let's get back to it. Now, let me just go ahead and kind of add on to what Michael Knowles was saying there. By the way, Michael Knowles is probably the only one at the Daily Wire that I actually really and truly, somewhat like, because Shapiro's great on the issues, but I still don't really care for him too much. Walsh, I'm not really going to go through all that right now, but of course, obviously, there's some takes he's had that I just don't really care for, but it's not enough to make me unsubscribe or anything like that. But the thing is, this right here. It's obviously a sad day when you decide you want to lock up your political opposition. I've been telling people for a while that what would happen is if you actually did this to the former president, what would eventually would do is it would rile up the base, and it would assure that the base would eventually show up to vote. As a matter of fact, when you have incumbent elections, when you have an actual incumbent in office, the most important thing is the base. Biden's base is not exactly too enthused about voting for him. And of course, Trump's base is actually very, very much enthused about voting for him. The only thing you did was consolidate this base. And then to go on top of this, when you did this, you allowed the president, the former president, to then turn right back around and fundraise what we believe to be right around $200 million. That's actually what's being reported right now. And Trump has actually bypassed Biden when it comes to fundraising. So it's actually something that, quite frankly, has backfired. Now, I can already hear somebody saying, dude, are you going to talk about how this right here is a bunch of BS? And my response to that is this right here. It is obviously BS. It's obviously weaponization of the DOJ. And obviously we are traipsing more and more and more into Stalinism. But here's the thing. I'm not going to sit here and panic about it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the issue, and then I'm eventually going to get it together, and then I'm going to go out there and vote against this nonsense. That right there is me. I believe that would have, could have, should have never helps, and you should always press forward. Yes, it does suck. Deal with the issue and move forward. That right there is just me. And obviously, this situation right here has got some people who typically don't get politically involved now suddenly involved. For example, Dr. Phil. He recently just excoriated Biden and the DOJ over this entire situation, and it looks like he's actually about to interview the former president. But with that right there being said, let's go ahead and get back to the rest of this, because you're about to see exactly what it's like when your brain is obviously on MSDNC.
Yes, and it's pretty clear this is not a man who thinks that he has to be accountable to the American people. When you look at the federal charge against Trump, there was a poll that came out when that charge was brought that showed 62% of Americans think that it's primarily politically motivated. They just don't seem to care. And so this has been a ratcheting up, as we've all noted on the panel, of trends that have been built up for some years now. Some would say going back to Richard Nixon. But certainly in the early Trump campaign, the Democrats tried to stop him from being president by spying on him and cooking up fake intelligence, ironically enough, with Russia. And that didn't work. Then they tried to throw him out by impeaching him twice. That didn't work. Then they tried to kick him out by rigging the election and changing all the voter rules, in some cases in contravention of state constitutions leading up to that election. That did get him out of office, and he did leave office, but then he didn't go away. He kept running again. So then they indicted him 4 times. Now they've convicted him. They're going to threaten to throw him in prison. Pretty soon they're going to threaten to send him to St. Helena. But this has absolutely nothing to do with the law. As was noted earlier, at most you're talking about a misdemeanor that would have already expired under the statute of limitations. I'm not even convinced that there was really a misdemeanor that Trump committed. So my fellow panelist here is celebrating that the rule of law has been vindicated and overturned 234 years of American legal tradition. I would challenge her to see if she could possibly articulate how and what crime Trump committed, because so far Alvin Bragg, the DA, has failed to do so. The judge in the case, Judge Merchan, has failed to do so. And they can't do it because Trump didn't commit any of the crimes for which he's been convicted.
Well,
okay, now that one right there, I'll let run a little bit longer. But if you ask these people, most of these people kind of can't, how do I say, pinpoint the actual crime. The truth be told is this right here. The 34 quote-unquote felonies were actually misdemeanors, and they fell 2 years outside the state statute of limitations. Actually, it's really worse than that. It's actually 5. These charges were levied on Trump, or they retrograde back to 2017, and the state statute of limitations on these misdemeanors would have actually ran out in 2019. It's 5 years since, so what did they do? They used some novel legal theories, they put them together, and they had a trial. Which, by the way, most of us already knew that Trump was not going to win that case, because guess what? New York is full of liberals. That right there is the actual truth of the situation. And by the way, one more thing needs to be said. The FEC, the Federal Elections Commission, they did not want to pursue any charges, and the Department of Justice itself did not want to go forward on this particular case. And by the way, the Democratic Party, they're trying to run back and say it's a statewide case, but let's just go ahead and be honest. The former president has been nailed with several cases, and right now, this is a Supreme Court case right now, talking about his immunity. If he has full immunity, and of course that does come out, and a lot of us believe that the recent attacks, the recent calls for Justice Alito to recuse himself, that tells me that there's about to be a ruling that is unfavorable to Democrats. It actually sounds quite familiar to another situation that we had when it comes to the election. And of course, that situation occurred back in 2012, but that right there is a separate video for the separate day. The fact of the matter is this, right? All these court cases that were designed to do was simply bog the former president down. They were designed to keep him to where he would be inside of a courtroom where he could not campaign. However, the thing is this right here, even though if he could not campaign, he could still launch ads. Okay, well, it looks like this guy is on pace to have $300 or $400 million before the end of the month of June, so you just helped him out. Everything these people do is completely counterproductive, and to go on top of this, these people also show exactly how big of loons these people really and truly are. These people can't even identify the actual crime of this situation, and of course, it's obviously not working out too well for them, but let's look at some more of this.
Francesca, just on that point, what crime did Trump commit?
It was financial crimes. It was white collar crimes. That is exactly
Which
what
one,
they
though?
charged him. He was convicted on.
What was the crime?
It's New York State law.
I understand. What was the crime?
It is New.
Francesca,
I don't even like it. It is
Well,
literally
hang on, Mark,
he just got convicted on 34 counts.
Francesca, what was the crime?
Of like cooking the actual books.
What was the crime?
You are not allowed. So you are not allowed to use your own financial, like your own money, to pay off somebody, and then he logged it as something different. He logged it as just a regular payment, but he was actually paying off.
Here in a second, Knowles is going to explain to her, and of course, I'm pretty sure you guys can already figure out exactly what her response is going to be, because there's actually a lot that happened in this 20-minute segment that went on longer than that. And of course, I'll be doing a follow-up video to this one here because there's obviously going to be a lot more to talk about. The thing is this right here. This lady right here, when you actually ask what the actual crime was, they can't exactly give it to you except the fact that they say, well, he paid a porn star for this. Okay, so paying a porn star is not actually illegal, and there actually is no law that says, especially in the state of New York, that says that he can't list it as a legal payment, which is actually what the hell he listed it as. The real crime of the case was actually figured out during the actual trial itself when Michael Cohen basically come out and admitted to stealing, I think it was right around $30,000 from the Trump organization itself. If anything, I think that Trump was maybe a little bit more incompetent in the sense that he brought in a guy like, say, Cohen, who, quite frankly, was very, very much a dishonest and incompetent person. If there's a crime anywhere, if there's anything I can actually go after Trump on, then quite frankly, it should be the fact that you hired somebody that was an idiot and somebody that, quite frankly, was a swindler. And a guy who, by the way, would also go to prison and then turn right back around and admitted to another crime while he was on the witness stand. The whole trial itself was basically a sham trial, but let's continue on with this.
Matter, but he was, and so it impacted campaign finance laws in New York State. Okay, that is what Juan Merchan just oversaw this.
Okay.
Alan Bragg brought these charges because
that's
Michael
not-
Cohen,
that's
his
not quite
fixer,
what
was
happened.
already sentenced to 3 years to do it.
Let's just go before Kevin. I'll be very, very, very patient. We'll come to you.
Look, I'm no expert. Let me just say, hang on,
No,
Michael.
Francesca.
You are no
By
expert.
the
That's
way.
fine. Because the
Francesca.
campaign finance.
No, Francesca, you definitely are not an expert. I'm not an expert either, but I know at least a little bit more than she does. There's also something else, too, that gets revealed in this video that she's not an expert at, but we'll get to that a little bit later on in the video. But let's get back to it.
Federal law.
Hang on,
Anyway,
Francesca. I want to go to Mark. You're the lawyer. Is anything Francesca just said, is that actually the crime?
Look, let me just say, I like Francesca a lot, and we probably agree on 80% of our worldviews. However, Francesca, the way you just described it, call me afterwards and I'll educate you, because that's not what happened. There was no theory that was given to the jurors. The jurors were told it could have been campaign finance, it could have been tax, it could have been false books. They were told they didn't have to specify, and specifically told they did not have to agree unanimously.
What the jurors were basically told to do in this situation, what they were essentially told to do, was they were told to go back and basically in 3 separate groups of 4, they were told by the judge that if you think he did something illegal, if you think it's a crime to do this, then we need you to come on out here and say that he's guilty. like I said before, it was obviously a rigged case and a rigged trial. And this guy right here admits that he actually has the exact same worldview as Miss Francesca here. But I mean,
that's what irks me. Lifelong Democrat, no fan of Trump, never voted for Trump, never will. But I will tell you, as somebody who has spent his entire career with kind of taking on unpopular causes and holding the government accountable, I have to tell you, I do that for a reason. And the reason is this kind of shenanigans, and that's the best light I can spin it, in the criminal courts has no place in a federal election.
No, I agree.
The campaign finance laws were federal, not state, and the state laws had nothing to do with it.
I want to go to Kevin. Been waiting very patiently. Kevin.
Now, that clip right there was something that actually happened after her exchange with Knowles, which I'll get back to here in a second. I know it's kind of wonky how I decided to kind of do this, but the thing is this right here. At the end of the day, though, you can kind of see exactly what's going on here. And don't worry, what Kevin O'Leary was saying was going to be in the follow-up video in that whole segment itself, because it was very interesting what Kevin had to say, because he basically told you exactly what was going to happen in the country itself. But I need to say this right quick to kind of preamble this. The guy that you're seeing that was discussing this topic with the girl in the red dress, Francesca, I guess her name is, that guy there is not a Republican, not a conservative, very much a Democrat. And, of course, a lot of liberals, civil libertarians themselves, have told these far-left radicals that, guess what? Nothing about this case added up. Nothing about this case was even a crime. And they basically been trying to tell the progressive left that you're going way too daggone far. I have been saying for a while that the first ones to turn against the Democratic Party would actually be the civil libertarians. The reason why they would turn against them is because the civil libertarians, they do care about the law. They just care about the law in the sense that they don't want to see anybody. It's just kind of in their nature to basically be defense attorneys. That's pretty much what it is. It's designed to be that. I mean, the previous video I did on this very same topic included Marco Mera, the guy who defended George Zimmerman in that case. And that case, by the way, was actually a slam dunk. I advise you guys to go check out the Trayvon hoax video, which is actually very, very good. I can't remember what the guy's name is who did it, but I'll try to link it in the description below. A lot of videos there, just saying. The fact of the matter is that you guys can obviously see that you have a certain segment of the left that, quite frankly, does not want to listen. But I started this video out showing you guys the Michael Knowles section and his response to her, and, of course, her saying that his viewers were primed for fascism. Let's look at that.
2020. He's the biggest guy in the party. It was going to happen. And Trump poses a real threat to the liberal establishment. He's not a Mitt Romney type Republican. He has different views from the so-called uniparty on things like trade, on things like immigration, and things like foreign policy and war. Trump posed a major threat. That's why they took such extraordinary measures for the last 8 years to take this guy out. They weren't able to do it politically. They weren't even really able to do it at the ballot box. So what's left? The only thing left to do is to try to throw him in prison so that he can't campaign for the election. I agree, it's backfiring.
This is not a federal case, Michael. You know that. It's not even a federal case. Why do you think that it's not a DOJ case? It's not a Biden case. It's not a Merrick Garland thing. It's New York state law. So the idea that this is somehow politically motivated is all made up in your head, because what you do on your show every day is you groom your audience for fascism and you set them up for a complete...
The judge in this case, Judge Juan Merchan, his daughter, works on behalf of the DNC. Juan Merchan also donated to Joe Biden. This type of information was coming out before the trial. So I'm pretty sure you can say there's definitely some connections there. Also, to go on top of that there, in the Georgia case, Fani Willis and Nathan Wade both, and I said Fani because obviously, Fani Willis and Nathan Wade both met with Biden before pursuing that case. And also to go on top of that, the 1-6 case, that right there is being pursued by a special prosecutor connected to Biden. Did you know that Merrick Garland, Biden's current DOJ head, his attorney general, did you know that this same guy actually held up the process to get a warrant on Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber? Interesting story, it really and truly is, that I obviously won't go through here, but obviously I'll link it in the description box and show you guys, obviously, the header and the B-roll footage. I'm just simply saying that former president's being persecuted by weaklings. And, of course, these people are also connected to the Biden DOJ. let's get to that last part.
Jessica.
Laid out very nonchalantly just a little bit ago. He was impeached twice. Doesn't really matter that he tried to blackmail the leader of Ukraine into digging up non-existent dirt on Joe Biden, but that doesn't matter to you
Joe
or
Biden
your
threatened to
followers.
withhold arms.
You want to make sure. You want to make
Francesca,
sure that when
you're
Trump is
accusing me
reelected,
of fascism.
he can get away.
That's a big-
He can
Francesca,
get away
you're
with
accusing
getting
me of
rid of the
fascism. That's a
Department of
big charge.
Education.
All I would point out is that it's not my party that's imprisoning its political opponents
Right.
now. So if we're going to throw that accusation about
I was
Who's
about
in
to say
prison?
one of the
Who's
key
in
tenets
prison?
of fascism is you imprison your political opponent.
Kind of sort of is a pillar of fascism. You got to prosecute the people that you're running against or the people that quite frankly challenge you. That's actually what's going on. Something else, too, when these people say that you're being primed for fascism, what these people don't seem to realize, and this right kind of goes back to what I've always said, that the left, they love to accuse you of that which they are guilty of. I mean, dude, seriously, you're going to sit here and tell me that we're the ones who are the fascists and that we're primed for fascism, but yet you guys are the ones who are trying to lock up your political opponents. This right here is your brain on MSDNC, a person who, quite frankly, does not know what the hell she's talking about. And, of course, as you guys obviously saw, over-emotional, over-irrational. Now, if somebody wants to come in here and say it's obviously a person who's been utilizing their looks their entire life to get by in life, I could obviously agree with some of that. I don't think she's bad looking or anything like that. But obviously, this right is a person that's not very bright, as you guys are going to see in this very, very next segment, to kind of sort of clamp the whole point down.
Spent the last 2 days having people talk to me at a conference I'm at, telling me that one of the phenomenons on TikTok, as Kevin invoked it, is people saying, I'm voting for the felon, I'm voting for the felon.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, you want a poll? I'll give you a poll. Take a look at what's happening there at the UFC fight and take a look at what's happening on TikTok.
Yeah. We're watching the end. This is when he came in. The place went completely nuts. And the trouble is, Francesca, I spent a lot of time in New York and LA. I have a place in LA and spent a lot of time working in New York. But I also do a lot of crime documentaries, ironically, which take me down to rural Florida, rural Texas, Alabama, places like that. And let me tell you, none of them agree with you. They all agree with that crowd at the UFC. And if I was a Democrat, I'd be quite unnerved that you've thrown the kitchen sink at this guy, and this is how a lot of the public are reacting.
Yeah. No, it makes sense that he'd be cheered at UFC. It's a sport full of actors.
Just wait for it.
You have this guy who's been pretending to be a serious politician for years now. Look, the
they're not
important thing
actors
about
in.
that interview
Sorry,
that he gave
hang
to Fox
on.
News.
You're not besmirching
The important
UFC.
thing about the Fox News.
Hang on. Fact check. You're thinking of WWE, the actors. The UFC, they're real fighters.
That stupid, smug look should tell you everything you need to know. First of all, there's a segment in there, and let's just go ahead and take a moment to acknowledge the crowd at UFC 302. The truth be told, and I heard somebody talking about this a while back, basically saying that Trump should not be at these UFC events. He should be somewhere else besides it. Here's the thing. That's a dumb take. You see, if Trump goes to these UFC events and these sporting events and he gets cheered, he suddenly looks like what? A man of the people. Also, to go on top of that, the Biden DOJ constantly trying to prosecute this man, and of course he goes to these events and gets cheered. Guess what it does? He's the man of the people, and then to go on top of this, now it kind of adds to the whole martyrdom complex. My God, they're trying to prosecute this guy. Everybody loves this guy. He's standing up for us. He's fighting for us. That's how out of touch these people are. But the thing that really gets me is right there in the middle, she said Mar-a-Lago, as if say Piers Morgan's been to Mar-a-Lago. I think Piers Morgan has interviewed Trump, but he's never actually hung out with him at Mar-a-Lago. So I don't see a reason to get on this guy for doing his job. He is a reporter. I always agree. I've seen Piers say some very, very bad takes, but still, he's obviously a reporter. But the one that gets me is obviously the one at the end that she automatically assumed that everybody watches the UFC. I personally don't watch the UFC as much as I used to because it's gone downhill. And she accused every UFC fighter in there of being an actor. It's the WWE, it's AEW. That right there is professional wrestling where everything is promos. And the guys do get hurt while they do it, especially the girls too. But that right there, for the most part, has already been preordained and fixed. It just goes to show you how little these people know. And of course, it also goes to prove to people that this right here is actually what your brain looks like when you are obviously in San Francisco, California, and you probably drink lattes all day. And then to go on top of that, yeah, you probably watch a lot of MSDNC. But as I said before, guys, there will be a follow-up to this video here because there's actually a much, much more serious thing going on here with this entire situation. I did not include in this video here. But I'll probably link the full clip in the description box here. There's going to be a lot of clips in there, just simply saying. You guys tell me what you think about this right here. Please hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sign off in the comment section, and I'll see you guys later.